And so some articulate a view that's theorizes two kingdoms. That for the Christian, we're under two kingdoms. We're under the kingdom of Christ spiritually, seen in the church, and then we're under the kingdoms of the world and the kingdoms of men physically. And those spheres are separate from one another. And we give our allegiance here to our magistrates in things physical and practical. And then over here, what is spiritual and what is eternal, we give to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I believe this dichotomy is unbiblical, and I believe it's harmful. I believe it has fit in our day and age because of the influence of secularism in the church. That the idea of two kingdoms really fits in well with a secular view of life, that over here you can have your sacred and you can worship God and worship Jesus, but it's just in your minds and just in your hearts. It has no real bearing over here in terms of politics, education, life in the city, how you live your life, the kind of job you do. That's secular. And so you can go to church on Sunday and be in the kingdom and do spiritual things, and then you go out in the real world, in the physical kingdom, and then you give your allegiance to that magistrate here. And so it fits in with this secular idea. And some articulate, both quietly and out loud, that because of the spiritual nature of Christ's kingdom, that the church really has no bearing upon the affairs of men. That the church should be disentangled from anything political. And by political, I mean anything that would govern the city. Greek word polis is where we get politics from. So anything that deals with the city life is political, and so that's not part of Christ's kingdom, and so we'll leave that over there. Anything that is involved in education and healthcare and vocation and work, well, that's all physical stuff handled by the kingdoms of men. And so the spiritual stuff, the Bible studies and the prayers and growing in holiness inside, that's the spiritual kingdom. And it's no wonder then that the church has so little impact on the world when we have that kind of theology. Because you can think yourself very, very spiritual, and you're not salt and light in the world. You have a secular view of what it means to be a Christian. And you think actually engaging in these kind of activities is actually unspiritual. It's carnal. It's fleshly. And so we don't want to touch these issues. And the problem is, this issue over here in politics, education, finance, that's getting so big that it's taking over all these little spiritual issues over here. Because now marriage is not a church issue anymore. Marriage is a politic issue. And gender and sexuality is not a religious issue. Now that's a politics issue. And so what is the church supposed to do? Well, if that's the kingdoms of men, I better retreat from that space and be quiet. I would much rather disband with the whole idea of secularism and this whole notion of two different kingdoms, and say that Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And that we would stand with the apostles, who was said of them in Acts 17, verse 7, that they were all acting against the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, Jesus. They understood that to profess Jesus as Lord didn't just impact the spiritual, what you did internally, but it impacted how you lived in the city. It impacted what was decreed from the parliament or from the courthouse or what was being taught in the school. Because Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and he is the King above every king and the Lord above every Lord.